Absolutely. And
Yeah.
honestly, I'm a perfect example of that, because the person I am now is very different from the person I was when I was younger, growing up.
Hmm.
The anger was in no way, it was in no way managed. It was in no way filtered. Now I leverage my anger to
Hmm.
hopefully do good things, right? When I was a kid, not only, you could say part of it was positive. My cousins and I spent our youth actively searching for Nazis to beat up. But the other part of it was just being an angry, depressed, insecure
Hmm.
kid who would go to the mall or go, to whatever, like 125th Street, and grill everybody on purpose. I was looking for a fucking fight
Hmm.
because of this pain. And I think it probably, since I've given 100% of myself to others in my adulthood, that might seem surprising to people,
Hmm.
but I had to get through that,
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because one of the things that I wanted to get into was you're in this activist space now. How did this start? Like, where did Awkward get his start? Because I know that your passion is in hip hop, is in rap. So you started off as that, as an artist. How did that start, and how did you parlay that into your activism? Because I want people to see exactly how you did it, and maybe they can actually incorporate that method into their lives.
Yeah. And honestly, if you want to continue to prioritize your music, that doesn't mean you can't also do these other things, leveraging the fame or name or whatever, the
Mhm.
popularity of even a single song, right?
Yeah.
In my case, they were almost inextricably linked from the beginning. They've just kind of changed in terms of like what the priority was. Um,
Mm.
I I was raised by an activist mom who took me to protests when I was like too young to even be there. Um,
Wow.
by 16, I was speaking at my town's MLK Day. I organized the Diversity Day, which I know now had a lot of issues with it, but a Diversity Day, a Holocaust Remembrance Day. So I was doing all of this before, when I was still a kid.
Mhm.
Um, while I was still, but this was toward the end when I was just starting to realize that I could fight less and love more.
Mm.
Right. But meanwhile, I grew up with Motown and hippie music, but a babysitter came and brought Public Enemy, and that was it. Right. And like Chuck D 25 years later would co-sign me, and like that kind of, that was it, right? Like that was
Yeah.
amazing. But
Yeah.
because of who it was, I knew
Mhm.
very early that you could do the same together. So music was my first outlet for that
Yeah.
anger, and for
Mhm.
saying the things that needed to be said, and for
Or
trying to give voice to people who are typically not allowed or silenced, right?
true. Yeah.
And over time, um, as I got older, especially after I moved out of New York City and was no longer in the community,
Mhm.
um, my priorities shifted, and it became more important for me to focus on the organizing and then using the music to supplement that, like
Mhm.
creating the 10 demands song for the 10 demands, creating the Medicare for All song for the Medicare for All march. And so I've been able to continue to do both. It's just,
Yeah.
what leads my decisions is a little different, I guess. My purpose is a little different. When I
Yeah.
first started rapping, I was making songs that were more traditional rap music too. You can find some songs where I don't sound like me, right? Um, and now I'm not going to do that. I don't have the time. I'm a dad. I have too much to do. So if I'm going to make a song, there's going to be a reason for it.
Got it. It's more socially conscious.
I mean, a lot of it was too,
Most
like
part.
back then in 2014, I actually released the first ever 100% for charity global hip hop project. Muting because of my dogs. All the money went to a charity that helped at-risk youth find alternatives to guns, particularly film was the main focus, and I had artists from every single continent on earth and more than 15 different countries. And the idea there was that hip hop is a powerful force and hip hop is universal and global. And like, let's demonstrate, globally what like we can do, right, with hip hop. But meanwhile, I might make a song, with Sean Price where we're really fucked up on drugs and like saying whatever the fuck we want. So like, unfortunately, my friend Sean is no longer with us and I don't do drugs anymore. So things have changed. Mm-hmm. Priorities change.
Yeah. So from what I gather, you're basically, and one of the things actually I want to point out was that when you start to get into a space where you become not only socially conscious, but economically conscious, because those two are intrinsically linked. If you're in art, that also becomes part of your artistry. And so that has been happening for years. You can go back to Johnny Cash. You can go back to Marvin Gaye. You can go back to
music. Basquiat, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, James Baldwin was a writer and poet.
Right.
And so when you're using that, that's part of the revolutionary spirit. And so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right. And also, it makes it easier to digest is not the right word, but when I'm like, as much as someone may or may not want to just stare at my white face and listen to me yell, I think it's probably nicer to watch nicer is not the right word either, because it's horrifying, but it's probably more entertaining and fuck, man, these dogs. I'm sorry, man.
It's okay.
If anyone can help me with these dogs, it would be great. It also evokes more emotion, I think, when you're watching a video and I'm singing or I'm rapping. There, like, that artistry adds to the feelings you get from it, right? So I think it's the whole idea behind edutainment, which is such a corny word, but I apologies, KRS. I think you invented that, but it's the idea of educating and entertaining at the same time.
Yeah. The part about educating and entertaining, it's hiding the aspirin in the applesauce. So a lot of times what people, I can give you a plate of food. So I used to be in the culinary industry. I was a line cook for years. I could just put all the plate on the food and just hand it to you. And then it's all good because it tastes good, right? It's cooked well. But then where's the presentation, right? Because a lot of times people eat with their eyes first before they eat that plate of food. So it can smell good, but if it looks like slop, you still may be like, But if you see it and it looks appealing to the eye, then you're more likely to engage with it. Same thing when it comes to a lot of these things for, especially when it comes to our activism, whether it be social or economic activism, is that when you present it in a way that's more palatable. For instance, you could be talking about these various different things just like you are right now. But the fact that you put it in a song actually is like sprinkling some salt on some food. So now it brightens it up. It wakes it up. It adds some flavor. You know what I mean? And so the fact that you're doing that, it actually makes it more digestible. So then people are actually able to more take it in into their heart, because music is really a vehicle to your heart.
Absolutely. And there is a great quote that, of course, I can't remember. Soundtrack. Basically, like, music is the soundtrack to the revolution, right? I mean that.
Yeah.
But I guess what better than ranting or chanting? Probably music sounds better. It's like kind of an obvious, like, cliched idea too, but it's not wrong. Like you were saying, Bob Dylan, whatever it is, there's always been people providing the background to what we do. And on that note, like, my music was played at Occupy in the city. My music was played in Wisconsin during the union the pro-union protests, anti-Walker protests. I know it was used elsewhere too. So there's that, right? It actually, like, provides the beat to our march in a way. But interestingly, it's also like touching on, when we talk about appearance, it's touching on this other negative side too, because that's me, Mr. Negativity, about, like, politicians who are successful because they're pretty, or ideas that are heard more clearly because the speaker is white or a man. Because what you're saying is so true, like, and it's important to me. And I didn't want to ask people for money for 10 demands or for movement for Black Lives. So I made that song and said, you can get this. So you're buying something. You're not just giving something away. So there is all this positive stuff. But then on the other hand, like, it sucks it even matters. Presentation, I guess, visual presentation, we can't avoid it as humans, but it's, in a way, it creates problems.
I'm sorry, you had cut out there for a second. I'm not sure if it's my connection.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. So, I mean,
yeah.
I don't know what was missed, but basically I was just saying that, yes, there's all this positive stuff, but of course, from a visual perspective, presentation can also create a lot of problems. The need for palatable presentation can create a lot of problems. And I think it's one of the reasons that, I hate to say it, but it's one of the reasons that I've been able to land certain interviews. It's like, it's racism. and honestly, I didn't want, and honestly, I'm really glad that now Nick, I would say, is, and maybe Zoya too, we're all pretty much the faces of 10 Demands, but for a long time, and by the way, none of us wanted there to be a face, but nevertheless, when you're promoting an idea that happens naturally, for a long time, it was just me. And that was not by choice for any of us. None of us said, yo, Awkward, you're good on camera, do it, or Awkward, you're white, do it. It was just like, other people weren't comfortable yet, and I could do it, and I can speak well, and that just kind of set this in motion, right? Where people were asking me then, right? After I did a couple, everyone was asking me. And when, as soon as it occurred to me, I started saying, I want to bring these other people with me. Like, yes, I'll come on, but like Cheyenne, who's our only indigenous person, is going to come on with me.
Yeah. So that is a really good point of using privilege in order to uplift, right?
I do that. Yeah, that's what I try to do.
It's kind of funny because you get a lot of people who complain about Karens, right? They're like, oh my God, this Karen. But have you seen a Karen where they actually stick up for minorities and people who are disenfranchised? It is the most awesome thing ever. I love seeing...
Because they're not afraid. Those women are not afraid.
Yeah. But at the same time, they don't center themselves. But, you know, they'll see somebody...
if they're not centering themselves and they're... Then they just look like a Karen or sound like a Karen.
Yeah. So they'll be like, it'll be like some middle-aged white woman named Susan, and she'll see some black woman trying to get in line, she got skipped in line or something. And then Susan will be like, excuse me, she was waiting here for a long time. Why aren't you dealing with her? I mean, she was in front of me. Why did you call me first? Like I love that. It's like, thank you,
Dude,
Susan. So I love that.
Yes, because this fucking country, the woman who it happened to couldn't say shit. Because if she did, the cops probably would have come for talking. So I'm very thankful for the few and far between. And that's what I do too. And it actually really pisses my wife off, because even to this day with 2 kids, I don't create the problem. I respond to problems. I can't still keep my mouth shut all the time. And like, if I'm witnessing it, I'm going to deal with it. I'm sorry.
But Awkward, that's the thing that I appreciate, because here's the problem. We do it, and we can do it, and we do it to as much as we possibly can.
Of course.
But we get overlooked.
Yeah.
But if a cishet white man does it and brings attention to it, then people start to look, and they start to pay attention. And so I think one of the best things about being your identity is that when you're an ally and you use that allyship for, say, our liberation, or maybe, talking and saying, hey, enough of this transphobia, or enough of this homophobia, or look, these immigrants haven't done you wrong. They're just trying to make a life for themselves. When you're doing that, it just makes them go, wait, you're not on our side? It's like, no, I'm not on your side. I'm on the side of people, and I'm on the side of humanity.
Yeah.
And so that is something that I think throws people for a loop. And then also, let's be real. If you made a TikTok, people will probably be like, oh, this guy, let's hear what he has to say. And then you start talking about issues that we face as Black people. And then next thing you know, it's like, damn, they get caught up in it, but then they have to hear it, So
I'd have a million followers. There's a couple of those guys who look exactly like me, who do just that. And I don't know all of them. There's a couple people I know on Twitter and TikTok who are full of shit. And, when I see, like a critical resistance member or something, engaging with them, I'm going to tell you the truth. I go and tell them, be careful of that person. Cause I'm not doing that shit. Cause they are not doing it for the right reasons. Anyway. Yeah. And that is so true that I'm heard more. And I'm making the most of that. Right. And when I was more heavily involved in hip hop, I tried to take a backseat. So the only album I ever put out had a million other Black rappers on it. Right. Because I knew who I was in this world and in this culture. And, so that's the same reason that I never had issues in the studio or at a party, because I don't talk like I am from a place that I'm not. I don't pretend I'm something I'm not. This is just who I am. I'm a crazy Jew. That's it, right? And take it or leave it. But I love people, like you said. We do it for the people. And lastly, I'll just say, now that I have completely bicked my head, I've never looked more like a Nazi. So, no joke, man. I shared on social media not that long ago, and of course, people are like, receipts, which I'm not doing because it'll dox me. But I had an engagement with a fucking sheriff, or a sergeant in the sheriff's department who lives around the corner from me, who talked my ear off for 15 minutes, assuming I was a fucking Nazi, saying the wildest shit. And and so I tweeted about that. The guy literally handed me his card and said, if you ever need me to kill anyone. I'm not kidding, man.
Holy crap,
And
bro.
they said, well, not they, like the people, humans responded to me and said, report him. I said, what? So I could end up in prison? You think if I report a cop, they're going to be nice to me? Well, show us this card. Why? So I can tell the Nazis on here where I live? What the fuck? Just trust me when I tell you, I never would have imagined it. Like life is crazier than fiction.